Good morning. I'm Barbara Colton, and I'm Vice President of the Board of Trustees here at Mainline Unitarian Church. Welcome to all of you here in the room and to those of you Zooming from home on this humid Sunday morning, the last day of June. After the service, we're going to have a coffee hour in the room across the hall. Hope everybody will stay and we'll have a chance to chat with our musicians and other folks. Are there any visitors with us here today? Welcome, welcome. We look forward to meeting you during the coffee hour. We are a liberal faith community, inspiring and nurturing hearts and minds to help each other lead lives of love, justice, learning, and hope for ourselves and for others. We're delighted to have Reverend Dr. Om Prakash as our guest minister today. Welcome. Dr. Om Prakash is a writer, certified life coach, licensed massage therapist, Reiki master teacher, Tai Chi and Qigong instructor. He's a graduate of Meadville Lombard Divinity School. He received his doctorate of ministry at the University of Creation Spirituality and Work and Spirituality, and did postdoctoral work at Sat Yoga Institute in Costa Rica studying spirituality and identity. He was a UU minister for 15 years and served in many roles, including Director of Racial and Social Justice for the Justice Priestley District, of which we've been a part, and presently specializes in a mind, body, and spirit healing practice, as well as a radio show and forum he hosts on practical spirituality at Blog Talk Radio and on Anchor. Wow. Wow. This is going to be good. Our music director is David Brown, and David will be accompanied by Jody on piano, and he will be introducing a debut of our new music chamber choir. Yay! Jan Nielsen will be giving our Time of All Ages this morning, and Steve Witt will be our worship associate this morning as well. Now, let us all join together in affirming our mission statement. Together, we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith. Thank you.
Peace That was great. Good morning. We gather this morning as one community, a community united by common ideals: love, justice, diversity, freedom, mutual care, equity. Yet look around. Really look at the faces of those around you. Each face represents an individual, every one of us with our own story, needs, strengths, and faults. We light our chalice today, honoring our common connection and also the uniqueness that lives within each of us. Our first hymn will be Spirit of Life, 123.
Sing one time through, and I will invite you all to join us after one time.
Good morning. I'm Jan Nielsen. I'm going to be talking to you the story for all ages. That's all of you. Remember, you're all of some age, so this applies to all of you. Don't fall asleep now. This isn't just for the kids. And welcome to all of you on Zoom. Great to have you here. I'm going to be talking today from the book Because Nothing Looks Like God by Lawrence and Karen Kushner, illustrated by Dawn Medjewski. This book is usually found in our children's library, which is upstairs in the Wonder Room. If you haven't been there, please go up and look at it. There are hundreds of books up there for youth of all age. So if you have children or grandchildren, please consider going to the children's library in the Wonder Room on the second floor. It's a great place. Where is God? God is in the beginning, in the first ripening tomato, and in cookies fresh from the oven, in the first fun day of vacation, and in the tiny hands of a baby. Where is God? God is in the end, in the last sweet bite of birthday cake, and in your worn, torn baby blanket, in the last wave goodbye at the end of a visit, and in the closing moments of someone's life. Where is God? God is in the way people come together in the sharing of a cold and gloomy morning, and in the Band-Aid fix-up after a fall, in the homemade gifts made of clay and paint, and in morning hugs and goodnight kisses. Where is God? God is in the world, in bird chirp, frog song, and chattering squirrels, and in the fly caught in the spider's web, in caterpillars chewing leaves from daisies, and in worms turning leaves into earth. Where is God? God is everywhere, if we only look. God is wherever we let God be. What does God look like? God looks like nothing, and nothing looks like God. But there are many things you cannot see, and still we are sure they are there. What does God look like? Like cool breezes on a hot summer night, or the rays of the sun drying puddles of rain, like the long hours until supper time, or the short minutes of a day at the beach. You know they are there, but there's nothing to see. What does God look like? Like the kindness in someone's voice, or the happiness in a song. Like the pride when mom or dad helps you in your class, or the jumpy excitement at the start of the holiday. You know it's there, but there's nothing to see. What does God look like? Like the love your mom adds to your goodnight story, or your dad's hooray when you first tie your shoes, like your hope when your turn at bat, or your worry when your dog runs away. You know it's there, but there's nothing to see. What does God look like? God doesn't look like anything either, because there's nothing to see. But everyone and everything gives us clues that God is here, clues that point to the one we cannot see. How does God make things happen? I'm a little off here. Sorry. No? Not paying attention enough. See if I can get to the right slide. No? There we are. Sorry, folks. How does God make things happen? Look at your family. See sisters taking turns on the slide and brothers sharing a new game. Watch how everyone comes together to help with dinner. How does God make things happen? Look at your school. A boy helps when another can't reach. A girl shares her lunch. Watch how everyone shows the swings to a new friend. Look at your town. One family gives money for people who lost their home. A neighborhood gathers books for children in the hospital. Watch how everyone helps a family with a new baby. How does God make things happen? Look in the mirror. Can you visit someone who feels lonely? Or pick up trash in the playground? Can you and your friends collect toys for children who have none? With little hands and big hands, with young hands and old hands, with your hands. That's how God makes things happen. Thank you. And if the children want to come with me now to have fun and activities in the McGinnis room, now's our time. Thank you.
Each month, we select a partner for our offering outreach. This month, our offering outreach partner is Eastern Pennsylvania Trans Equity Project, also known as EPTEP. The organization's services are focused on people who identify as transgender and gender expansive, with no regard to race, economic status, or gender assigned at birth. They are an advocate for trans people in our local community and work to assist with questions and issues that impact gender diverse Pennsylvanians. They also help with assisting in legal name changes, peer-led support groups, financial assistance for food and housing, and gender-affirming garments and prosthesis. Let me share, and we've been doing it all month, but let me just share with you a quick story, an example of the work that APTEP is doing. An individual, Andy Marie, is a young transgender woman of color. She grew up socially isolated in rural Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, and Andy Marie was introduced to EPTEP through her therapist. She began taking part in EPT's EP peer support groups and subsequently received a college scholarship and legal name change assistance through the organization. She's now going to school in Atlanta and pursuing a degree in management and is working part-time in the retail industry. So that's great. If you're watching online and you would like to contribute, follow the instructions that you see on the screen. Yep. And for those of you with us today, you can put cash in the basket or make a cashless donation by scanning the QR code that's printed in your order of service. The offering will now be greatly received. Thanks.
Summer Together, in the affirmation of gratitude, thank you. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have the privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others. Thank you for giving.
Candles of Community is our ritual of personal sharing and support in a trusted and safe environment. After each candle is lit, you may say along with me that we are holding those mentioned in your hearts. First, we have a candle of joy for Leslie and John Bass, who celebrated the 90th birthday of John's brother, Fred. This joyous reunion of family and friends took place on June 5th and 6th in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. Lucky them. Okay, and then we have a... What's it? Oh, we hold you in our hearts. Thank you. We also have a candle of concern, candle of sorrow for a longtime member. Her family gave a notice that Nellie Childress was a longtime member, passed away on April 9th, 2024. For Nellie Childress and her family, we hold you in our hearts. And for joys and concerns that are too deep for words, we light one more candle.
For just a moment of meditation and contemplation, I'm going to, as we sit and we allow ourselves to feel our bodies on the floor and our seat against our backs, and as we take in a nice deep breath, recognizing that we are all here together, letting go of all the stress and the strain of rushing to get here, letting go of all of the tensions that we had during the week, moving in a world that can seem loveless sometimes. Let us take time, and I'm going to read from a book. Just a couple of meditations that we can listen to, following that by a moment of silence and a chant ending that comes from something called Tanson's Journey, where this great king goes out to find God, and at the end he finds what he was looking for. The first reading, Over the Rainbow. On this sunny day at Keswick Coffee, watching the world go by, I wonder what the world will offer next. In this plethora of choices and uncertainties, the only thing I know for sure is that you and I exist on this turning world, waiting for our dance with life and death to end, and our movement beyond the known to the unknown to begin. Perhaps we, like the wise ones before us who cracked this shell of ego self, will find the soul that refuses death and begin to live somewhere over the rainbow in this present moment called the eternal now. The next reading, Nothing More Beautiful. I used to play with lightning, hold thunderbolts in the palm of my hand, and crack the clouds, causing storms and rain to wash away the pain and suffering of this old world and replenish it with life. At night, I would sit among the stars and whisper words of encouragement in the silence of the night to lovers longing for union with divine presence. I have seen life in many forms, rising from the oceans at the dusk, learning to swim and crawl, walk and take wing. But there is nothing more beautiful than to see a human against all odds reach outward and within to become the presence of God. Narayanam, Narayana, Shri Mahasudevi, Narayanam, 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 Shri Mahasudevi, Narayanam. Murahara Nangatara Narayana. Murahara Nangatara Narayana. Shri Managita de Narayana. Norada San Loka Narayana. Naramoga Shanida Narayana. Narayana Swami Narayana. Narayana Swami Narayana. 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 Narayana Swami Narayana. Narayana Swami Narayana. 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 Narayana Swami Narayana. Thank you, everyone. The readings came from a book called Love Poems to the Beloved and You, because the writer does not see a distinction between the beloved and you. This is something I learned a long time ago. I remember I was a minister at the UU Church of Manchester. It was very interesting. I had a very interesting congregation. I had 1/3 that was feminist theology at Pagan. I had 1/3 that was atheist, and I had 1/3 that were Christians left over from the Universalist Christians at the time. And I thought it was great, actually, because I shared all those belief systems. I remember, though, as I was sitting there, they would bring the old mail from the minister's box and give it to me. This was the first week I was there. And I remember looking at this little card. It came from something called the University of Creation Spirituality. It was this school, alternative wisdom school, that was created by Matthew Fox, which I had heard of before. He had been this monk for years and years, this Catholic monk who had gotten silenced, and then he left and became an Episcopalian because of his stances on feminism. He thought that women should have rights and should be able to be priests. And he also thought that all faiths were equal and was looking into the central core teachings of every faith instead of what would be called the transient in UUism, basically, where Theodore Parker talked about the transient and the permanent, whereas the permanent is that core value, like when we have love in our new affirmation, basically. So he ended up leaving the church, and he started this University of Creation Spirituality. I remember holding this card, and thinking, do I want to try this? And that one moment changed my life greatly. I decided to try it, so I go all the way out to Oakland, California. I'm going to spend a week there in intensives. And I go into this room of about 70 or 80 people. They're from all walks of life. All that one needed to have is a master's degree to study for a doctor of ministry, which made it different right there because they weren't all clergy. And we go in, and what happens is that we first start off with movement, dance, something called body prayer. Next, we go to a lecture, and then we do something called arts as meditation, where we learn to tap into our hearts and our spirits through arts. And then the last section of the day is as we talk with each other, we learn about each other, we go over our experiences. And this was to create a wise person. It wasn't to fill us with information, it was to draw that which was in us out of us. And the amazing thing about it was during these ceremonies and rituals, nobody ever asked what anybody meant by God, because everybody knew what they meant. And instead of trying to define the word, everybody just translated it into what they meant. And as we went deeper and deeper in all these spiritualities, going straight to the mystic paths of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, paganism, all of these things, we found the same truth. The truth that we are not allowed to recognize. The truth that is hard to even speak out and say. The truth that has been crushed for thousands of years violently through the sword, murder, shunning, causing poverty and pain. And that truth, you see, is that we are what we're seeking. There is no God outside of us without us being inside of it and it being inside of us. What does that mean? It means what one of the people said there that surprised me, that made me think, even though I should have known it all the time. I went into this class, it was called the New Cosmology. It said we had to reinvent the stories about ourselves and our ancestors. We had to go back to the truth, let go of all of the old trappings that surrounded us and taught us about the way that things were. So I went to this class. There was a guy named Stuart Cohen and Brian Swim there. And so we're sitting there and we're talking about the evolution of the universe, and Brian Swim says, so at one time we had this proto-animal, one decides to put his head down and charge and fight, and the other decides to run. And through the evolutionary process, this one decision made by the ancestors decides what's going to be a horse, what's going to be a cow, what's going to be a bull. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, wait a minute. These things decided what they were doing. You see, before that, I always thought of evolution like this machine where things were clicking and where things were moving, where animals were like machines with no decisions, no thought processes. But I was looking at that thinking, these things shaped their evolutionary process by what they were thinking. And these things not only were thinking beings, but they came from a long line of thinking beings. They were carrying the life of the first cell, and each cell, each being, every species after that came from that same life force and carried that life force, and all of the loves and the survival skills and all of the heredity of each and every one of those things went step by step by step by step until it arrived to us. This is what they wanted to tell us and teach us who and what we really are. We are not like a bunch of balls bouncing around, as in Newtonian physics. No, we are the realm of possibilities, as they talk about nowadays. That's who we are. That's what we are. And when we realize that we are not separate from the ground of being, but we are the ground of being, things begin to change. That is the secret that no one ever wants us to know. And so what has happened throughout time is that we go to these mystical religions, we have these spiritual people, they have this encounter with the divine, they teach it to somebody, and as time goes and history goes on, it gets narrowed and narrowed and narrowed down to a fundamentalism that does not allow us to see the truth. And then we have the great fight that happens in the West between science and the church, science and religion. But when the science first occurs, it's different than what we have now. You see, it had 4 different pillars when it first became popular during the Renaissance. One was finding truth through looking at traditional values that worked. If it was a tradition, if people did it over and over and over for generations and generations and it worked, then it was understood as true. Another was abstract thinking, using one's mind, knowing how the universe worked and sitting and contemplating, and one could actually use one's mind to decide what action and reaction would occur, and that could be seen as truth. One was experimentation, where we create some type of event and we sort of narrow the stimulus going into it so we know that what we're doing is what is influencing the event. And so experimentation could bring us to truth. And there was yet another one that was observation. Going out, living our lives, looking out the crowds, understanding what's going on as we live, stepping back and looking and observing the world, and through looking and observing, we could tell what was going on and we could tell what would happen next possibly. But as time went on, especially during the late 1800s, science began to be narrowed also. It became materialism. It said that we could not understand anything that we could not see or touch or measure, and it didn't exist, which is very different than it was early at its origins. And it was fighting, it was a battle between them and the church, and what happened was basically the church said, well, we'll take spirituality, and the scientists said, we'll take the material world. But as time went on, the scientists said, well, everything's material, so nothing exists other than what we have. And that's where we find ourselves. We are in a spiritual search for truth, using the tools that can bring us the truth, but the problem is this. As soon as you get in one track, as soon as you cling to one identity and you hold on to that as the most important thing in your life, reason is no longer reason, it becomes rationalizing. There's a big elephant sitting in the room, and in order to understand, we have to explain away the elephant when reasoning tells us something else. We have to cling on to that which is most important to us, that which holds us together. I think some people would call that the ego. I would call it the collective ego or the collective identity. And we hold on to that. And as long as we hold on to that and cling to that and push out things that do not fit with that, we're rationalizing. We're not using reason. We're not seeking the truth. We're seeking sort of a reformation of what we already have. So how do we seek the truth nowadays? How do we seek the truth in an age of reason? First of all, what we do is we make it into an age of reason again. Going back, understanding the true origins of all of these things, and learning how to see that a lot of what everyone, I think, is living in now is sort of a fantasy. The 3 jewels of Buddhism, well, the 3 poisons, remember, one is anger, one is hunger, and one is delusion, living in a fantasy. And I am thinking nowadays, as we look around the world and everything is falling apart and crumbling, we are learning for the first time that a lot of what we have believed is a fantasy. And that is a difficult place to be in unless we find the hope, the faith, and the trust to let go of the fantasy. And when we do that, we will be who we really are. We won't only talk about being this creative energy, this power of the universe. We will be that, and we will be free. It's very hard to do that. During the time of the Inquisition, people were killed for doing that and thinking that way. Nowadays, people are scientists. There are probably people right here who have had these crazy experiences, these experiences that William James talked about, these mystical experiences where they felt like they were great and they were connected with everything, and some people hearing voices and seeing things and all kinds of things, but they'll never say anything about it because they've learned to be ashamed of it. I used to start Reiki groups when I was at various churches, and I remember at one church, some of the people were up on arms because they said, "Oh, that Reiki is crazy." But we started a group, and each week it was growing. And one time I was talking with people there, and I found out that they were the adult children of people at the church who hadn't come for 10 or 20 years. And once something that touched their hearts was allowed in the church, they started coming. Now just think about that. They were not coming because Reiki was not allowed in the church, because they were shamed if they said anything about that. When you think about a church where the Unitarians started out as these transcendentalists, where they were studying the Vedas and they were studying Buddhism and they were studying Islam and all these mystical traditions, they started out as these mystics, basically, intellectual, not just woo-woo, crazy type people, but responsible search for truth and meaning. And then you had the universalists who began to experiment on all kinds of things, spiritualism, healing, and all these things. And these two powerful denominations somehow lost their roots. It totally disappeared. And I don't mean that everybody should be a mystic or everyone should be into spiritualism, or there is something called the Psi group or something like that, as you use, that I only heard about a GA that explores ESP and all those phenomenons, and you barely hear about them. I'm talking about all of us being open enough to be able and willing to hear what these people are saying. And as we do that, we can learn from these people. And we can do the one thing, you see, that most people don't want us to do, and that is to talk. In a society that's sort of a power over thing, the worst thing that can possibly happen is when groups of different people can talk and share their opinion without running out of the room. There's this old story, biblical story. There is a strange guy named Paul Wallace. The man's a genius. Maybe that's why he's so strange. But he gives a strange interpretation of it. He said basically that it talks about these people all going to build a tower to heaven, and the Elohim, and that's what it is biblically, Elohim, which means the powerful ones. It doesn't mean one God, it means the powerful ones. It says the powerful ones saw the human beings building this tower to the heavens, and the powerful ones said, hey, we can't let that happen because they'll take away our power if they can build that tower to heaven. So what we have to do is we have to split them up, and we send them all over the world, and we change their language so they don't understand each other, so we can stay in power. And when I was a Pentecostal, I was like, that's good, yeah. But later on, I'm thinking, just think about that now. Think about a group of people getting together and saying, well, if these people know too much, they might rebel and they might think they don't need us. So what we need to do is we need to divide and conquer all of them. And that way we'll stay in power. When you start thinking about it that way, it really starts hitting home, because that is what has happened to each and every one of us. We have been divided from people who are not like us, all of the redlining, all of the communities based on income, all the race, class, gender, ethnicity, all of that, we've been divided. We've been given different words. We've been given words that will trigger one group and will make the other group feel comfortable. We have been divided. And the only way to become undivided is to dare to listen and to dare to realize what we are. We are not separate little bodies, separate little egos flying around in the world, looking outside of ourselves. We are all part of one thing. We are like what is described as Indra's net, all like sacred, beautiful jewels in a net with many facets, all seeing the reflection of each other in ourselves if we dive deep enough. It's time to get back to that transcendentalist nature in order to transcend the common thinking and behavior of the human being and to become what we are, to become what Aristotle talked of when he talked about the good. He said, the good is that at which all things aim. The acorn planted in the earth aims at sprouting, becoming a tree, spreading its roots, growing and maturing and becoming part of this whole large ecosystem. And to him, that's what good meant. And that is what I think we are all here to do, to grow, to mature, to spread our branches and to spread our roots so that we become part of this greater thing where we take from it and we give to it and we fulfill the niche of the human being. And that niche of the human being is to be able to think, to reason, to imagine something, and to make it happen through the work of one's hands and one's heart. But as long as we are making it happen for someone else, and we're not in contact with our own hearts and are not making it for ourselves and our community, we won't be free, and we won't be partaking of the good of humanity. That, I think, is why so many people now are so depressed, and now the number of suicides for young people are rising because we are not being fulfilled. Fulfillment is this: learning to love and to be loved. That's all it is. And the rest comes as a result of that. If you plant the tree in good soil and it has nourishment and water, it grows and becomes a beautiful tree. And so we all come together here to learn to create the soil that allows us to grow. And the growing is not a big struggle. It is a natural thing. So when we begin to bump against that shell, like seeds sprouted in the earth, let's not turn back. Turn back because we run into the boundaries that people have planted in us about who we are and who we're supposed to be. It's time to crack that shell and to rise higher towards a life-giving sun, and to be that life-giving sun, because that is what we always have been, and that is what we always will be. That is who we are, friends. And a life that is beautiful and wonderful and fulfilling overrides those who would hinder us, keep us locked in boxes. The time for the boxes are over. All the institutions are breaking down, and it's time for new life to develop. And we are the ones who are going to do that. Why are we going to do that? Because it's in our nature to do that. It's simply in our nature. Thank you for having me today. May you always be able to see the beauty and wisdom and grace that exists within yourself and each and every one of us. Namaste, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
I invite you all to rise in body and spirit as we sing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses. And again, the chamber choir will sing verse 1. I will signal for the congregation to sing verses 2 through 5.
Closing words are from the mystic Rumi. Rumi says, out of myself, wanting what I see in your eyes, not power, but to greet the dawn wearing white pilgrim cloth. I had power, now I want sight. And I add, now may those who have sight have power. Amen. So be it, and blessed be.
Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenade. Oh, so gently, from sound to silence fading. Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenade. Oh, so gently, from sound to silence fading. Sing me a love is burning. Sing me a song to cool a lover's burning. When to my heart the anguish keeps returning. When to my heart the anguish keeps returning. Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenading. Oh, so gently from sound to silence fading. Sing me to sleep with a sweet serenading. Oh, so gently from sound to silence fading.